For as long as I can remember, I've always thought about things a lot. And a lot of this, I think, stems from my athletic background. So while playing sports, always had to be thinking ahead, constantly trying to dissect whatever my opponent's next move was going to be so that I could ultimately come out on top. But whenever I would fail, I would usually be punished in some way. It wasn't something that was exactly encouraged in my upbringing with the various coaches that I had. On top of that, I had undiagnosed ADHD, which over time made it really difficult to focus on the task at hand. Instead, my focus would always be on what happens if I fuck this up. So all of my focus was on not losing rather than winning. And this is something that is conditioned in many of us. In school, if you fail, you're punished. Yet many of the top athletes and performers, biggest creatives in the world, have failed immensely before their biggest successes. Failure and success are two sides of the same coin. So now we have this disconnect. We want to do well, but we also don't want to fuck things up. And so we're scared, we're confused, and we're distracted. And this leads us to these thought loops that we can't get out of, regardless of all the ways that we try to numb the pain of our own inadequacies. And so you probably already know that you overthink. Hell, there are memes galore that people share on the internet shamelessly to admit their habits with overthinking. And we might laugh at it on the outside, but deep down we know this is causing more harm than good. And it doesn't take any sort of deep thought to realize that most of the time, our overthinking isn't justified. For me, I would try and stop overthinking by turning to alcohol or weed or other extracurricular activities in order to become more present. But the problem is that being present through these methods didn't solve the root of the entire problem. Overthinking and perfectionism is approval seeking disguised as careful strategizing. I remember whenever I was single, I'd go out on dates, crack a joke that didn't get the laugh that I thought it would, and then I would sit there and ruminate on it for days about how dumb I sounded, and I would probably be single forever for that very reason. And whenever I would mention that joke or whatever to the girl that I went out with, she would have no idea what I was talking about. It wasn't even on her mind. So this leads me to think, like, of course, we care about how we are perceived by others. I mean, it's hardwired into our system to belong. But at some point, we have to evolve past that, especially in modern times now. So when it comes to our goals, we think that we are just spending a little bit of extra care and time strategizing over what method, strategy, tactic, or direction we're going to take our creative project or our career, etc. So we look to things like pros and cons lists, asking for advice, scouring Google for all the answers. But the issue with doing this is that these are all ways that we try and outsource our ability to make a decision. And because we try to outsource all of our decisions, this means that we don't trust ourselves enough to actually make the right decision. And this makes sense because we try to be really careful because we just don't want to make the wrong decision. And this all comes back to some level of fear or doubt or guilt in our ability to do the things that we know are what's best for us. You don't trust yourself. And the reason that you don't trust yourself is because you haven't held the promises that you've made to yourself in the past. So instead, all that we do is wait for a super clear moment that will give us a 100% for sure prediction on what's going to happen when we do said thing. But these moments don't just happen by waiting around. And this is amplified because ADHD is a real bitch. If you're creative in any capacity, either you or you know someone that has ADHD. And you know that ADHD a lot of times makes focusing and just doing certain tasks a hell of a lot harder than what it actually should be. So your mind's constantly running at 1,000,000 miles a minute. But the problem is whenever we're raised, the modern school system doesn't allow us the space to explore how our brains work and how to leverage it and work with it and use the power that comes within it. So instead, we're punished for not being focused on the things that we couldn't care less about. But the funny thing is, at least what I've observed in adulthood, it's not that we couldn't care about those subjects that they're teaching us. It's just few teachers or educational leaders, if any, ever give us a reason as to why we should care. If they would tell us why we should care, how it relates to us directly, we would probably have no problem seeing the value and want to continue to learn more about the thing. But because it's the norm to just tell people, learn this, don't ask questions, just do, we're never taught how to properly handle this and how our brain works. So to us, this is a super heavy burden that we have to try and lift ourselves and figure out how to work and operate in a world that's set up for people who don't have this like ADHD, constant distraction brain structure. So it also doesn't help that we have notifications blowing our phone up at all hours of the day, and most content is just short, dopamine-ridden, 30-second blasts of entertainment. So it's an uphill battle to solve this problem of overthinking. Hell, I still haven't figured out how to fix it. I have found a few methods that work well, at least for me anyway, that allow me to make decisions and do things efficiently despite the fact that I still overthink a lot. And so first, we have to look to the antidote to anxiety, because if you overthink, you probably also have a lot of anxiety. So when we're overthinking and we're anxious, usually we have a ton of energy that's stuck inside our minds and our bodies. So it's like an excess buildup of soot in a fireplace. And so it doesn't allow for efficient flow. So if things don't get out of our heads and our bodies very good at all. So it just gets stuck in there and we feel like we're in a living hell. So when all of our energy is stuck inside our heads and bodies, we have to find a way to get this out. And the only way to get this out is through action of some kind. So we just have to do something. It could be washing the dishes, doing laundry, make the social media content that you've said you would for the past 6 months, go for a jog, do some push-ups, do anything that gets expending energy to release the buildup that has already been within your body. And this isn't going to solve all of your problems, but it's the first step towards moving in the right direction. And I would argue that this alone would help 80% of people. And so once we have figured out how to start, getting energy out and actually acting and doing things that, we know we should do, we have to start to set guardrails to keep us on the path. So once this excess energy is out of the system, I've found that I'm in a much clearer headspace to start and organize myself in my days that allow me to solve whatever problems that are keeping me from hitting the goals that I have and being the person that I want to be. So if you want to make progress towards your goals, you have to have guardrails to keep you from falling off. And whenever I say guardrails, I'm referring to anything that keeps you focused on whatever your definitive aim is in life. And for me, these guardrails are a defined long-term, mid-term, and short-term goal, tasks on a calendar, a decision-making framework, and routines. So when it comes to a defined long-term, mid-term, and short-term goal, I know when my goals are unclear, my mind is unclear. It's good to have big long-term goals, but whenever you have ADHD, I've accepted that I'm highly biased towards instant gratification and shorter-term thinking. So I need multiple levels of goal intervals. So I have a 5-year goal, I have a 1-year goal, I have a 3 to 6 month goal, I have a weekly goal, and I have a daily goal. And as each of these goals get smaller and closer to the present moment, the amount of clarity increases. This is like going from 480 pixels to 4K. The closer to right now the goal is, the more achievable and doable it becomes because the action steps to get there are clear. Now, the 1-week goal and the daily goals need to be action-oriented, not result-oriented, because there is a delay in the results that you get. So you need to get momentum going and keep momentum going. And you do this through the short-term action-oriented goals. So after I have these goals set up, I will put them down as tasks on a calendar. So putting things physically outside of my mind makes it easier for me to conceptualize everything that's going on up here, actually read it, and I will see that it's nearly as big of a deal as what I was making it out to be in here. Because a lot of times, the only reason we don't do something is because of the fact we can't sit down and actually look and see everything that there is to do. And most of the time, you'll realize that those tasks, like the one thing that takes 30 seconds to do that you've been putting off for 3 months, just put it on the calendar and you'll do it. Try it. I just know that that works like hell for me. So next, I have a decision-making framework, which is super simple, right? It's what I use to decide what am I going to do right now, or am I going to do this thing now or not? All right. And it's usually paired with a super easy, low-friction task. That way I can turn the key in the ignition of the action vehicle that I am trying to do. So first, I ask, what is stopping me from doing this thing now? If I answer nothing, then I just start to do it. And if I have something that I have to do now or have planned within a very short period of time, then I schedule it and put it on my calendar. And I know that once I get into the groove of a task, I can usually flow through it pretty quickly and efficiently. It's just the starting of the task. It's just the starting of the task that's the actual hard part. And so second, having the first task, as I've already said, is the ignition to the action vehicle. The point is to try and make this thing that you have to do so easy, you almost don't want to do it because of how stupid simple it is. So for instance, whenever I need to write something for video content, like a script or something, I can't have video script as the first task because there's so many various little parts in it. My mind tends to get overwhelmed. So instead, my first task that I say to do is turn on the computer. That's it. The vehicle started. And I would say about 8 out of 10 times, I end up doing the thing that I need to do. Sometimes I do still end up not doing it and being overwhelmed. But the point isn't to try to be perfect here, because in my opinion, I'll take getting something done 8 out of 10 times better than 0 or 1 out of 10 times. So in order to make all of this easier, this is where I set up certain routines for certain things that I do. So the last thing that I make sure to have is a simple routine that doesn't use a lot of my mental energy. I don't think that routines are 100% necessary for anybody, but for me, it just helps me get into a better flow state. So when you have a brain that has an insane ability to hyperfocus, it helps to have ways to try and get that hyperfocus going as often as possible. And so routines or rituals, whatever you want to call it, help this happen. They make it so the brain doesn't have to make a decision on what to do next. So things that aren't habits require more brain energy to do. So we want habituated actions so we can get the most out of our mental bandwidth and conserve as much energy as possible while getting the maximum amount of output. So for instance, my mornings, what I usually do is I wake up, I drink a glass of water, I brew my coffee, go on about a 20-30 minute walk, and then I immediately come back and get to work. And now it's gotten to the point where this is a habit. So whenever I sit down to do my day job and work, I just go and I just start. And so more times than not, I'm able to focus on what I need to do for work and get it done very quickly and very efficiently, which leaves the rest of my day to be able to kind of plan other things and work on other projects that I have. So I have other routines that I do for starting other certain things in my life, but you get the point. If you can have something that your brain kind of knows the routine of and starts to get into that groove, it can make it a lot easier for you to actually start on the things that you know you need to do without thinking too much. And so after all of this, when it comes to actually pushing out your creative project or the thing that you're trying to do, the 70% rule has been the best thing that has ever happened for me personally, that has actually forced me to consistently put things out there into the world. So I came across the 70% rule from a video by Struthless a couple years ago. And the 70% rule is very simple. aim for 70%, not 100%. So if you have a project that you're doing, can you make it at least 70% as perfect as you ideally want to? And if you can, send it. The 70% rule helps prevent perfectionism because it forces you to publish something that is good enough. And this is so that you can get data on what actually worked about the thing. For example, if you're trying to get into the whole content creation thing or wanting to put your version of art into the world, you would need to know what's resonating with people so you can continue to create in a way that connects with those people. And you want to use this rule because the antidote for an overthinking mind is actual data. The hard part for me, and I think for most people that chronically overthink their big goals, are we're constantly searching for more data to figure out what the best way to do something is. But the problem is that data isn't from your own personal experience. Therefore, there is less certainty in the decision that you are making. So when we directly experience something, it holds more weight than using other people's experience of that thing. And this is why you should take all advice from anyone with a grain of salt. If you're not concerned about what other people think, then by all means, wait until it's perfect. But if you're telling yourself that you don't care what other people think, then would you really be having these issues with overthinking and perfectionism right now in the first place? It's not that deep thought and careful planning and strategizing are a bad thing. We just use it as a crutch. We overthink because we're scared of the pain of rejection for something that isn't 100% perfect. And the 70% rule makes it so that when you do finish a project, the intention wasn't to make it perfect. So you can go to sleep at night knowing you did what you said you would to the best of the ability that you have at this very moment. And what this does is this reinforces trust in yourself, which means that you need less approval from others, which means that you stop overthinking and let go of this perfectionist mindset. So implement the 70% rule. I would love to hear how it goes. Sign up for my newsletter down below. It's where you can connect with me directly. Also have contact info in the description. Leave a comment if you want to start another conversation or you would like me to do a video on something else around this or around a different topic. But other than that, peace.